I'm back, Mr. Clarke's back. Time to take a look at the changing ways of life and thought during the Industrial Revolution. We'll be looking at how new values shape new social order within society. We'll look at how the role of women began to change during the Industrial Revolution. We'll look at the impact of education, new scientific ideas, and religion during the Industrial Revolution. Question one: how did the Industrial Revolution change the social order in the Western world? The upper class, they were the super rich, the industrial, and the business families. Some old nobility was left over who were part of the super wealthy. They held the top government and military jobs. During this period of time in the Industrial Revolution, the upper middle class were those who were pushing their way up the economic ladder: doctors, lawyers, and scientists. The lower middle class included teachers and office workers, shopkeepers, and clerks. And the lower class was the majority of people. These were factory workers and peasants. Two, how did parents treat their children during the 1800s? Children were taught to have the utmost respect for their parents and other adults. The children during this period of time were to be seen but not heard, meaning that the children should be in the background and they should be kind of subservient to the adults, kind of putting their heads down and waiting for permission to do something. Three, explain the cult of domesticity. This put forth the belief that the ideal family contained a husband who worked, provided for the family. The wife would remain at home, raise the children, cook, clean, and enjoyed being a housewife. Slogans appeared on the walls in homes like "Home Sweet Home." You can see that very loosely on the back wall there of the family in the image there. It does say "Home Sweet Home" on the wall there. Very difficult probably to see, especially in this particular format. You can see there the whole family, the children looking very endearing towards their father, who's sharply dressed and maybe has a pretty good job. They have a little pet bird over there. They got, looks like, multiple cats and kittens. There's a lot of imagery there about the idealistic family. And keep in mind, too, a good way to remember the responsibilities of women according to this period of time in history is the 3 C's: cooking, cleaning, and children. I'll just shrink the size of the image there. That way, if you still need anything from 2 or 3, you can still see that. 4, did lower class families have any shot at the cult of domesticity? In most instances, no. Wives and many children were forced to work, as we alluded to previously when we looked at child labor during this period of time of the Industrial Revolution. Often the family needed everybody, all hands on deck, all people working or earning a wage in order to provide for the family. Okay. 5, what was the temperance movement? Temperance movement was a campaign to limit or ban the use of alcoholic beverages. Women believed that drinking threatened the family life and made workplaces less productive and inefficient. The chief organization that fought for temperance and against the sale of alcohol, that was the Women's Christian Temperance Union. So you can see the imagery on the left there. God wills it, meaning they tied Christianity and religion into like the anti-alcohol campaign. Don't let the saloon have a chance at us, meaning the saloon chance at the mom and the 2 children there, believing that their lives would be worse if their dad/husband was drinking. Six, how did women's involvement in the abolitionist movement lead to some women campaigning for voting rights? While campaigning for the rights of others in the abolitionist movement was the movement to ban slavery or abolish slavery in the United States, they realized, 2 women, that they were lacking some of the same rights that slaves lacked, including the right to vote. They decided that they deserved the same rights as men. One of the things that's really hard to imagine that in the history of our country, that women have only been voting in the United States for 100 years. 2020 was the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote. And their first president they voted for was Warren G. Harding. The most recent one that a lot of women voted for is they voted for in overwhelming numbers the Democratic candidate in 2020, Joe Biden. So they kind of bookended a Republican candidate in Harding in 1920, and women voted in large numbers in 2020 for a Democrat in Joe Biden. So things changed quite a bit over a 100-year period of time. Other issues that women activists fought for: fairness in marriage, the right to divorce, property laws, the suffrage movement or the right to vote movement, and equal pay. Some of these things women are still fighting for today, including equal pay, right to divorce. In some states, right into the 1900s, only the husband could sue for divorce. What two women were the pioneers in the United States in regard to the women's suffrage movement? Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. Stanton pictured on the right, Stanton to the far left. There's two images of Stanton. A quote from Stanton: "Come, come, my conservative friend, wipe the dew off your spectacles and see the world is moving." So they felt that in some cases the Conservative Party or Republicans were the ones holding back the right to vote for women. 9. What two nations were the first to grant women the right to vote? These were the lands down under: New Zealand and Australia. 10. What skills did schools begin to teach beyond academics? Why did they begin teaching these skills? They taught punctuality, obedience to authority, disciplined work habits, and patriotism, all of which can carry over in a broader sense to society. These skills were important because many students would later work in large offices and factories, so having some of these disciplined work habits would be very beneficial. Before the Industrial Revolution, most students worked on farms or in their parents' shops. So these skills were not quite as necessary during that period of time as they would be in the future. 11. How did the education of girls compare with the education of boys? Why did girls and boys receive different educations? Girls attended only primary school and did not take much in the way of science, math, or phys ed classes, quite obviously illustrating a gender bias here. These subjects were deemed unfit for girls in their future goals, as they were to marry well and have children. Middle and upper class boys received a more rigorous education, went on to college in some instances to prepare for higher level jobs in government or business. Many also learned the skills necessary to continue the growth of industry and the modern city. I'm going to move into a little section looking at science, developments in science during this period of time. 12. How did the work of John Dalton influence Dmitri Mendeleev? Why was their work so important? Dalton developed the atomic theory, which stated that all matter was made up of atoms and that each element had its own kind of atoms. Mendeleev used the atomic theory and Dalton's idea to create a table that grouped elements together based on their atomic weights. Some of this is kind of the foundation for what you learn in science classes today. In addition, Dalton's work was a major breakthrough in chemistry, while Mendeleev's table is the basis, obviously, for the modern chemistry or periodic table. 13. What new sciences and discoveries challenged long-held beliefs about the age of the Earth? Why were these ideas controversial? Archaeology and discovery of fossilized Neanderthal bones led to new ideas about early human life. Both of these ideas challenged directly the biblical account of creationism. So for the first time, we're really seeing a direct conflict between science and religion. That's going to come to a battle multiple times now moving forward in history. When new science and discoveries challenge long-held beliefs about the Earth. The new science of geology. Charles Lyell's work offered evidence that the Earth formed millions of years ago and that life did not appear for a very long time. Archaeology and the discovery of the fossilized Neanderthal bones. I think I'm being a little repetitive there, might be. Moving on to Charles Darwin. Darwin, he was a British naturalist who in 1859, after years of research, published The Origin of Species. B, he argued that all forms of life had evolved from a present state over millions of years. So once again, something in direct conflict with the church. Where did Darwin do much of his research? Well, he sailed on the British ship the Beagle in 1835 and landed on the Galapagos Islands, which you can see on the map there. The arrow pointed on the right there, just off the coast of South America, off the west coast of South America. Here he did a lot of his research, and what was really unique about the Galapagos Islands are and it remains somewhat true still today, not really touched by outside forces. A lot of the species developed in isolation there. You can see some of the beautiful landscape on the left and kind of a giant tortoise that was discovered on the right side there. 16, what was Darwin's theory of natural selection? Darwin argued that because all species overproduced offspring, there developed a constant competition for food. He called this the survival of the fittest. Only those species with stronger characteristics would survive. For example, longer necked giraffes lived, and gradually the shorter necked giraffes died out. So if you have a shorter giraffe, obviously it's not going to be able to reach the higher tree branches. So the ones that were shorter eventually died out because they could not eat. 17, why were his ideas controversial? Darwin's ideas were in direct contradiction with the biblical thought and teaching of the Adam and Eve theory. 18, how did thinkers adapt Darwin's ideas into social Darwinism? Thinkers applied Darwin's ideas to society, claiming that the fitter and stronger humans were superior to others. They believed stronger humans would dominate in times of war and business. Weaker humans would be defeated, and this was acceptable in the minds of social Darwinists. This would lead to some negative things within society, including racism, segregation, and imperialism, the idea that certain groups of people should dominate over other groups of people. '20. Why did living conditions in industrial countries encourage compassionate and charitable feelings among some people? Industrialization created harsh living and working conditions for many. Some felt the need to push for reform for the working poor. And religious organizations were one way to do that. They would often volunteer and take donations and try and give back to others. 21, William Wordsworth's poem. Here's a quote from his poem that we're going to discuss. It's a beauteous evening, calm and free. The holy time is quiet as a nun, breathless with adoration. The broad sun is sinking down in its tranquility. This values power and beauty of nature. It contrasts the emotional restraint and reason of the Enlightenment, and it turned away from the industrialization of city life. 22, how did Beethoven's music reflect romanticism? His music created intense emotion and expressed universal themes such as love, loss, death, joy, and fear. His Sixth Symphony captures a joyful day in the countryside interrupted by a violent thunderstorm. The symphony stresses the power and joy of nature, which are romantic ideals. 23, what themes inspired many romantic writers and architects? Why might they have found these ideas inspirational? These writers and architects were inspired by history, legend, folklore, old styles, and forms. These things represented simpler times in the glorious past, a time before the Industrial Revolution, the growth of materialism, and the loss of identity. 24, what subjects do realistic writers typically focus on in their novels? They focused on poverty, the lives of slum dwellers, factory workers, children working. They also wrote about urban crime, hunger, poverty, homelessness, all the problems of the cities. They were hoping to bring attention to serious social causes and create an avenue and hope for reform. 25, how did members of the middle class respond to the realist movement? They were shocked by the grim depictions of the lives of the poor and the working class, and many consider realists to be immoral for bringing to attention some of the flaws within society. While people were aware of these social problems, they tried to ignore them or tried to pretend they didn't exist. We see a lot of that still in contemporary society today. Realists force them to see and accept the harsh reality of the industrial age. Painter Gustave Courbet once said, "I cannot paint an angel because I've never seen one." What did he mean by this? He meant that he painted only what he saw and not what he imagined in his own mind, which is a key component of realism. The realists rejected the romantic's emphasis on imagination, emotion, and expression in favor of reality. '27, how was photography used to support reform efforts? Photographers were able to capture real life, which made the harsh lives of the working class a reality for all. You couldn't ignore it because you were seeing it. Before the invention of the camera, artists were only able to imagine the lives of their subjects. Now artists can present actual proof of the ills within society. 28, how does impressionist painting differ from realistic painting? Realistic painting tried to capture real people and events, where impressionism sought to capture the first fleeting expression made by a scene or object on the viewer's eye. Finally, the lesson reflection question: what were the positive changes brought about by the Industrial Revolution? Amongst some of the positive changes would be goods produced more quickly and cheaply, advancements in transportation linked places together, agricultural improvements made food more plentiful, medical advancements, vaccination, and improved hygiene increased life expectancy. In addition to that, you had modern forms of communication. Take a moment or two to get down anything you need to. Remember, you could always pause or go back if you missed anything. I try to go through this a little bit quickly. That way, hopefully you can get it down in that time frame. Not obviously, the pause option's there for you. Hopefully you enjoyed our discussion on the reforms and the impact of the Industrial Revolution on society. Until next time, Mr. Clarke is out.